Confirm you can see recording?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome, welcome. This is the tree story of video with Gaia Morrissette. And you know about the tree stories, and where I'm going with it is collecting ideas, insights from people who have interacted with trees. And by listening to it, you have the opportunity to pull some insights for yourself, but also for your grandchildren or children. And I know that Gaia has some really wonderful insights to share with us, even including her first name.
Mm.
So why don't you just, for those of us who don't know what Gaia means, can you just share what Gaia is about? Gaia?
So Gaia is Mother Earth, and she's one of the, in the Greek mythology and Greek goddesses around. She created all the other gods and goddesses. She's kind of like the creator, as well as, she represents Earth. She is Earth.
Yes. Isn't that a great start, folks? So there we go. So one of the things that I do when I ask people to share their tree stories is to just pick a story that has great meaning for you and just share it with us, and so that we get a sense of how the tree or trees wove themselves into your lives and where it led you, and then we'll take it from there. So where would you like to go? What tree?
Okay, so there's this beautiful cedar tree. And I have had a wonderful relationship with cedar trees as, as givers and smudging and magic and connection. I was, the grandmother cedar trees. And so there was this beautiful cedar tree that was at this river, and there was this like little waterfall it was like this little beautiful sanctuary in the middle of the city that no one knew about. And I would go there to drum and connect and ground, and when life would get overwhelming and stressed out. And this tree was like laying on its side, and it was the concrete around it of the dam was all wrapped around this tree. And I would just go and lean and lay for hours on this tree and connect with her. So I was going through the ending of my marriage, and while my marriage was ending, I was going through some really hard times, and emotionally I was in a lot of distress. And I would go probably every other day to this beautiful cedar tree, and I would just cry and cry cry with the river and this beautiful tree, and I would hold her, and she would help me release all of that sadness and give all that sadness away, so that I could go out into the world and do what I needed to do. And so while I was going through this period, but that tree was my savior. She saved me. She saved me to move through that transition of grief.
So the description you gave has a sense of it laying down. Can you just give us a little bit more? Because normally we don't think of trees laying down, even though it's a fascinating picture. So just tell us a little bit more about that.
So it was like the tree was growing up the side of the river, and um, there was this old dam that had the concrete fallen apart. That it used to be a mill in this little spot, and so the concrete came up kind of the side of the tree, and so as the tree decided to continue its growth, it moved and it went this direction.
Okay.
And so the concrete was here, and the tree was laying this way over the river.
Ah, okay.
Right. And so I could actually, and there was like the, so one trunk of the tree was straight up, and the other trunk was going this direction. And in that little crevice that was right there, I could climb into there and actually lay down with my heart right on the tree and hug her completely as I laid over the river.
Yeah, thank you for that, because the imagery of that is like one trunk is reaching for the sky, another one's reaching for the water, and its roots are planted in the earth,
Yeah.
and that's just a very beautiful image. So thank you. I it just helps me. Oh wow, that's great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So one of the other things you did is you did some other activities. I know you were laying on the tree, but what else? You said you were drumming around the tree. What other activities were you doing with the tree at the time?
So yeah, so I used to drum often with the trees, with this particular trees in the forest. The vibration of the the deep vibration of the drum would go into the earth. And so there was like this connection to the roots. When I drum in the forest, it's like this deep connection with the drumming of the heartbeat of the rhythm of life with the trees and the roots. And it's like going deep and grounding into that space, that vibration and that connection. But then there's also, so that's that is almost like the offering of music and this offering of gifting to the trees of my essence, I guess, my energetic essence, right? And then this beautiful gift of receiving from the earth underneath me and all the roots, the grounded roots of the trees, giving me that feedback, energetic feedback, in which I, whatever that might be that I particularly need at that moment while I'm doing my drumming.
Okay. So then, how did trees continue to be in your life? I'm thinking you're not necessarily by that tree now. So,
No, but I visit the tree about once every 6 months. I actually go
okay.
visit that specific tree, right?
Okay.
Um, Trees are a part of how I live. Like it's just like, so in my neighborhood, I go every morning. I walk my dog, and as I walk my dog, in my neighborhood, there's some spectacular ancient trees that are so magical and amazing. And so every morning when I'm walking the dog, I go and I hug all these major trees. So I'm like hugging the tree, and the dog saying hello in his dog way on the other side of the tree. And, and I, say hello. If I'm not hugging them, I'm putting my hand and saying good morning to each one of these trees. So so there's a series of trees that exist in my sphere that I engage with on a daily basis.
So it's really you're helping to connect your dog to the tree. Your dog is helping you to connect with the tree. The tree is helping you to connect with each other. So there's a lot
Yeah,
of connection that's happening because of the
of the
trees that you're meeting.
exactly the trees, the tree friends that I have in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my neighbors are like, whoa, crazy tree hugging girl, she's back. Why is she on our front lawn hugging our tree?
So there's probably a little bit of a cautionary note there for some people, depending where the tree is in relation to the house,
Yeah.
right? But I think there's a point there about in our neighborhoods, there's some really wonderful trees, and often they're just passed by. What
Hmm.
would it be like if you were to stop and say hello?
Hmm. It's wonderful to say hello, and I find that because where I live in Canada, in Ontario, we have 4 seasons. And so the trees all go through their own transition all year long. And it's like this beautiful adventure that I get to go on with each one of these trees as I watch them go into hibernation and changing colors. And then right now we're in spring, and so everything's becoming alive and awake. And so it's like as the trees have.
So you just cut out on me there. So just go back. The trees, it's springtime and just start there again.
Okay. So it's springtime and everything's becoming alive and awake, and every morning like the new buds are coming out, and I'm like so excited. I'm like, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And what ends up happening is that this cycle of energy is also the cycle that I go through in my life in a year. I can see when I need to hibernate and go within. You know, this is the time of year where I'm starting to awaken as well, and start expanding, being more out in the world and engaging in the world. So it's like as the trees go through their evolution every year, I go through that same secular cycle.
Right. Well, great. Well, thank you for that. Now, is there anything that you'd like to share about trees for the world right now?
I think it's so powerful to just take a moment and stop and hang out with the tree. Like, whether it's sitting under that tree having a picnic, whether that's, you know, you're a tree hugger like me and you go and hug the trees, right? Even just laying under that tree and taking the time to watch all the leaves and all the nuances that exist in that tree as a moment to say, how unique am I? You know, each tree has this uniqueness and this individuality to it. And how can we take the time to look at our own individuality and expand and explore and discover what makes us unique?
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
You're
This is video number 4 of 5. Welcome, everyone. This is video number 4, interview number 4, collaborative conversation number 4 with Gaia Morrissette. A couple of weeks later, and we're continuing our journey into business and life. And as part of the WELLth series, you know that Gaia has some great insights about business and life. And we're going to get started into this, our conversation. And one of the places I'd like to start today is being alive. Now, we talk about being and being human and being fully human and being natural and that part, but there's something about aliveness, not the can of drink. And we can tell folks by that laugh, I'm sure if we could can what it is that Gaia knows about being alive, I'm sure we all would like to have a bit of a drink of that. But let's just go over to aliveness and being alive. Can we start there? What's your thoughts about being alive or aliveness?
I believe and I really feel, well, I feel alive. I feel like, you know, there's a huge difference between, I know even with my own journey in life, that when I feel numb and I feel almost like disconnected from myself, from everything, from people, from my body, from my senses, from everything, there's this, like, it's almost like there's this film between you and who you really are. And when that film gets washed away or break through, there's this, on the other side, it's like everything is so awake and alive and tingling and exciting, and it's almost like it sizzles. It's like electricity, and it's like this electricity of not only in your body, but of everything possible around you.
So a sense of magic?
Well, yes, yes, I would say very magical.
Well, I wrote an article recently about the magician and the mystic. And can you just share with us what your thoughts are about magic and this notion of magician maybe, and how it links to business and life?
So for me, when I say magic, it's about, you know, more of the mystic side. It's about not, you know, pulling rabbits from hats and card tricks, but more about connecting to all the life force, energy, and essence of everything that exists around us. and being able to tap into that energy and learning how to harness that energy and focus that energy. And when you can do that, you can then create what you want to create in your business, and it affects how you move in your business, because now you're not just moving from this like autopilot or numb sensation or like trying to figure stuff out. It's almost like you don't need to try to figure anything out. It's about just allowing everything to be and getting all of that information and data from all around you, which is what happens when you're in that magical space and that magical place and when you've tapped in. Then the other really awesome thing about being a magical being is that you're completely tapped in to your intuition, your instincts. And from those places, you make decisions that work beautifully and with ease.
Yeah, a little bit more. That's a great great segue, I think, to something else. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So when we learn to tap into our intuitiveness and our instincts, but so for me, I want to define those two. So instincts are our primal self-preservation, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. It's that primal part of us of survival. So that's what our instincts are. And our bodies start to tell us, is this safe? Is this good? Is this bad? And that's the instinct part of it, right? And so when we're going to make decisions around our business and or people or collaborations or hiring people, and we tap into that instinct of, is this a good fit or not a good fit, and we know where it lives in our bodies, then we make decisions that always work out perfectly. And we all have this ability to know before something happens. We all have this skill set. But we've been told that we've been taught, especially when we were kids, to not listen to it and to ignore it. And what happens is, I mean, they did studies on, I can't remember the amount of people that they did the study with, but it was a lot of people who had experienced trauma and violent crimes. And every one of them's instinct told them that they were going to be in danger before it happened. And the difference is it was either instantaneous or there was a longer period of time. And that's where, you know, the more adept you are, I think that time changes. But every single one of us has that instinct of our self-preservation and safety. And so when we can learn to tap that into that and respect that and trust that, then we make decisions from that place. So that's the instinct. And then the intuitiveness is like when we're connected to our higher awareness, our ability to observe and take in so many different variables that our kind of human brain can't filter or consciously are aware of. And so we then start making better choices. We have less expensive life lessons, because we can course correct sooner. There's all these really cool things that happen when we can see and connect on an intuitive level of where do we need to go, what posts, to everything from social media posts to who am I going to collaborate with, to who do I reach out to what phone call do I make, to everything. When we move in that place of intuitive and instinctual perspective, our business boom with ease.
Okay. So those are elements I'm going to use the word conduit. Like they're coming in and you're going out, and there's this sort of flow that's taking place because you're tapping into this other information, right? Mm-hmm. It's more than data, right? You know, datas are just, but there's something there that's a little bit more whole, but you still got to do something with it to turn it into that knowledge wisdom storyline. So conduit. So is there a way in which to enhance that conduit, or is there something there about conduit enhancement? Like,
Yeah, I was.
I'm just tapping into my conduit right now.
No, exactly. It's just awesome. I feel like being a conduit is where we let go of our preconceived human ideology that filters through the information and judge it. Like I feel like
Okay.
when you're a conduit, you can push aside your human judgments and fears and insecurities, and you can move that aside to allow that data, that knowledge, that wisdom, that feeling, that knowing from not just from your higher consciousness, but for connecting into global consciousness, to collect, connecting into the universe, right? And we can, and you can intent you but the key for that to happen is that you have to be able to learn how to move you aside, and all of your stuff and all of your insecurities, fears, blockages, even perspectives and perceptions of how you think, and the attachment of how you think things should be, or what it's supposed to look like, and what does it mean, and the meaning of all of those things. And when we can move that aside and we can allow that information to come in through a different filter of just knowing and accepting and trusting, then we make choices from that place. And we can then we can take in a little bit of this information and that information, and we can kind of put it all together and let some of our own personal experiences come into that information and apply it to how it needs to apply in our business and our lives and our relationships. But in order for that pure, it's almost like purity, like this pure energy without any kind of filter in it, needs to come in first before we can do what we need to do with it.
So I think you're talking about bias. Like, there's another way to
Yes.
throw into this is just moving the bias aside, letting it flow through. And then I think it's also important to figure out of what flows through, because that's a form of knowing, but really the lived experience comes from that which you apply.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be true for what you're getting at?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not applying it, then you're not having the deeper, richer concept of the lived experience. Because, well, I read about it. Oh, I heard about it, but what does that mean? I've got to do something with that.
Yeah, I think it's like that. Now you step into it.
Okay.
It's like you step into this flow, and it becomes, now it integrates as being who you are and how you move and how you think. And it does do a rewiring of those old biases and these other things, so that you have new knowledge and new wisdom, right? And now you start to move from this new perspective.
And gaining that new perspective is so important, because sometimes, and I think you're hinting at it, is not everything is facing forward to you. There's things that are going on. There's things going on peripheral, or there's the ripple effect of your business that's going to come back in another way, and therefore you have to be open to this intuitive conduit to be able to have that flow take place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about that, or
Yeah.
add to
Okay,
that?
okay, okay. So I'm gonna say, so for me, the way that I look at it is everything weaves together. Everything affects everything else. So
Yeah.
when we are aware of, there's not just this here. There's all that lives over here. There's all that lives behind us.
Yeah.
And then there's all that lives below us. And then there's the stuff that's happening in the other room, but yet affects your life, your business. How other people move in the world affects your life, your business. So it's about, I guess, yeah, it's about the understanding too of how everything interweaves and plays and dances with one another. Because if you don't, and I think that's that sacred knowledge, that juicy knowledge of wisdom and knowing, and it's like because you can allow yourself to understand that this moment is just one, in this experience, in this one moment is, and my interpretation of it is only one thing of the million things that are happening right now all around me. And in 2 minutes from now, there's going to be another bunch of million things going on. And how do they all play with each other?
Well, and what you're doing is you're reminding me, as I'm a writer, so one of the things I do is I'll write about things like, well, what are the 5 tenets of this, or what are the 10 aspects of this, or what are the 10 juicy elements of this? And I sometimes go to elements because of elemental. And there is a couple of ways of looking at this notion of elemental. And so for whatever reason, I'm being directed to ask you about elements and elemental, and how does that play itself out in your world?
So for me, as a magical being, that's completely connected and alive with everything around me, the reason I can tap in and connect to everything that's alive and around me is because everything's made up of elements. Everything that is created on this plane, in this dimension, in this on earth is made up of elements. And so being an elemental as part of who I am is being able to talk to those, understand those elements, how those elements affect different elements and different things that are happening all around me. And so for me, that's what being an elemental is about being able to really connect and drop in and understand that each element and everything is made up of those elements that exists around us, that we can see and feel and experience.
Yeah, and then there's the periodic table made up of all the different elements.
Exactly, right? Like everything that exists is made up of, there's elements that make it into, manifest it into this reality.
And then there's the magical elements, or the elementals, like the fairies, right? And the pixies. And we can't forget about them because, where are they?
And the dragons and the mer people, and yes.
And the stone people,
and the
tree people.
Yeah.
So the notion of elementals, whichever way you want to look at this, is an important, because it's what you bring together. Now, some people might say bring the elements together to build something. Some people might say bring the elements to grow something. Build, grow. Where would you go with that?
Build, grow. Well, I feel like the word build is very human. I guess is the best way to put it. It's like, okay, I'm going to build a house. So it's like, I'm basically going to take these different components and I'm going to put them together to create what I want it to be into existence. And I feel like the word grow is more organic. It's like, there's no really control over grow, right? Building is all about, you can systematically control this, what the outcome is. And growing is like, it just is going to happen, how it's going to happen. You can't make a tree grow in a certain way. I mean, well, you can, but it's a lot of work, right? You have to work really, really hard to make that happen, right? But it's like, growing just happens. And it's just like with people, when we grow, there's no real like, this is how it's going to look and this is the outcome that's going to happen. There's no true control of the narrative in that, right? So growing is like letting go of expectations and control. And building is like, I have a particular expectation and a goal, and that it needs to meet these expectations.
Yes. Well, I've gone through the same thing, and I'm always very alert when I'm going to use the word build and when I'm going to use the word grow, because they both are apropos, And if you use them in the correct way in writing, because as people know, I write, and the way in which you use the words conjure up, really important images that lead to decisions, that lead to actions, that lead to outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But I know one of the words that you use, and we know that words matter. I think we've established that already, is that in your work and in your life, you might use a word like priestess.
Yes, in my world, I'm a high priestess of divine sexual magic as well as elementals. And so this is about how I show up, how I understand how all this stuff works together, and the responsibilities that go along with having that knowledge, and then also the responsibilities that go along with teaching and passing on that knowledge to my apprentice, to my students, as kind of the guardian of that knowledge. So that word, the word priestess is, and being a high priestess is, that's what that means. It's like you're the keeper of that information and the responsibilities that go along with that.
So in terms of the priestess, then, truly understanding what it means to be alive, to deal with the elementals, the notion of conduits, these would be important words that would apply to serving as a priestess. Am I correct in that as well?
Oh yeah, it's incredibly important. All of those words are incredibly important to being able to serve, and to serve from a place of light. So moving in and moving in that place of life, not just life, but light and love, and not and choosing to move from that place versus moving from a place of manipulation, control, and abusing those powers and manipulating those powers to do harm to yourself or others. So.
Right. So it's something to explore. So if there's priestess, then there's the priest.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily in the same as we would understand as a religious context, but this notion of the magic, the conduit, the elementals, there are aspects of that can be woven into the life, whether you're male or female.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or you're connected to divine, whether you're moving from a more divine masculine or divine feminine space, because I want to, for all of the fluid gender and identities and being very all inclusive, right? So you don't have to be female to be a priestess, and you don't have to be male to be a priest. It's whatever calling that looks like for you.
Yes.
And whatever that resonates in your calling in that is, it just needed to honor that, because that's an important part in the work that I do is really self-acceptance and self-love, and making a safe space for everybody.
Yes, very true, and using it in its widest sense, I think, is really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
The words that we're using is, how do they go out? Where do they go out? Who uses them? And let's be more. I think you used fluid, a little more fluid in
Mm-hmm.
our use of those words. So thank you for today. That gets us to the close of number 4 of 5. And we're going to get together and we're going to do the 5th one here soon. So look forward to sharing that with you. And thanks, Gaia. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Mwah!
This is number 5. Welcome, welcome. This is number 5 of 5 collaborative conversations, and with Gaia Morrissette. And Gaia has been sharing lots of great insights about the connection between business and life. And I so appreciate those perspectives. And they're very, what I will call, and she uses words like this, as open and fluid and magical and elemental, which I think is great, because a lot of those words don't necessarily end up in the business world.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a meeting today, and we're going to speak about the magic of business. There would be a little bit of a deer in the headlights look at that point.
But see, business would be more fun then, and it would be easier, and life would be so much more fun and easy and profitable if we had those conversations.
Yeah, because what often happens now is, I think you'll find this to be true, okay? And I'm just going to use a couple of words. Like, there's a lot of drama in business, blockages, right? It's sort of like people are putting their feet in cement blocks. And I'm being very animated here because it's unfortunate, right? Drama, blockage, feet in cement blocks, like, people don't talk to me about what's going on, and all these kind of phrases that you hear. And a lot of my work, I get at those phrases, what people are actually saying about being in the workplace. So I'm just going to pick up on a couple of those words, and I want to see where it takes us and what you've got to share about this part from, business and life. Okay. Let's take a look at the word drama. How does drama flow in your life?
Oh, well, first of all, my life is pretty drama free because I work really hard to make sure that that is my reality. Except for when it comes to clients and things like that, and that's different. But in my own business, my business model of how I move in my personal life, I am all about ease and flow, and drama does not exist in ease and flow. Drama is chaos and crisis, and it's usually causes trauma and comes from a place of trauma. And so when we're moving from those places where everything is this huge drama, emotional reactions, over the top, everybody's throwing tantrums, it doesn't get anything accomplished. It actually stops all workflow from truly happening, from a business perspective as well as from a personal perspective. You can't move through drama and trauma. You should move through drama and trauma, but when you're in drama and trauma, and that is what's being created, there's almost like there's an addiction to feed off of it, and to feed it, and to feed it, and to feed it. And so you can see it happening in the workforce all the time. You can see it when you have groups of people together. One person has a drama moment, a reaction, a reactive to something that's gone on that is they've taken personally, they've internalized it, they're basically triggered, is basically what is happening, of something that happened in their past that they haven't healed yet. And so they're reactive. And now their reaction, somebody else comes along and like, oh, they're in that drama spike. Yay, I like that. It feeds me. And so then they jump in the pool. And now you got two people in the drama pool swimming around, drowning, wishing somebody would save them, but it's not going to happen. And somebody else comes along and they're like, woo, drama party. They jump in. And so it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Doesn't serve anybody anything. Well, in a good, I hate to use the word good, in a productivity way, it serves nothing. There's a lot of emotional feeding that's happening, and it's serving people on that level, on that deeper level of being a victim and what that serves, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that it is serving connection and relationships, and building those relationships from that place of drama and trauma place. So there's stuff that it serves, which is why people do it. But from a workplace and a productivity and growth and ease and all the beautiful things that could be happening, it doesn't really support any of that.
Right. Well, the notion of jumping into the pool and all that, it serves, but there's also the sense of, if you go into the trauma, there's also blockage where you stop people jumping in, even into the pool, because they can't get to know you or talk to you or understand where you're going. And I can appreciate that in life and in business, is you put up the blocks and people bounce away from you. Any thoughts about the use of the word blockage with what you're talking about?
Well, I think that's an awesome perspective of that even though you're in the drama and people are feeding on that drama and feeding your drama and you know, all that kind of stuff, you really aren't allowing anybody to truly know you and truly see you. And because you aren't allowing yourself to feel, it doesn't, usually it's because it doesn't feel safe to be who you are and to be that, the vulnerable self, and all the risking that goes along with that, which is usually why there's a lot of drama reactiveness of protection, really is where that's coming from. And so when you put those walls up, you don't really allow deep connections to happen. But we don't allow those deep connections because we're afraid of, because there needs to be healing that needs to be done about maybe that wasn't safe for you, right? So I think that's when we put that kind of a blockage up, you know, I think that's part of what it is. It's self-preservation. It's the perspective of, I need to keep myself safe. And it's the same with whether we're talking about people connecting to us, or this talk about success blockage, right? The blockage, that the perception that if I'm successful, it may carry this meaning of responsibility, and I don't and I'm too afraid of that responsibility, so I'm going to put up a roadblock to prevent me from getting to that success or getting that promotion. Or so that word blockage I think it really comes down to self-preservation. It was created for out of a place of fear, and it's created from a place of woundedness, and it's created from a place of trauma, really. And so we create these blockages all around us to keep us contained in what we know to be true in that moment. And anything that's outside of that truth that we've known and we've always known and we've always done, you know, our brain has been taught to register as scary and dangerous and bad and all these kind of things. And so we create all of these different ways in which we have blockages that prevent us from succeeding and being the best version of ourselves, whether that's in business, relationships, our health. Like, it affects all of our life.
And that's where we throw in words like fear. But what we always have to do is pay, oh, there's fear of rejection, okay? Fear of success, rejection. Like, isn't, hey, and people are all over the place because they really haven't slowed down enough to go, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And I think a word that we could pop in here now is enroll in a life that is, you decide differently. We will use words like empower here as well. And empower, enroll are kind of interesting words when someone's in the trauma to talk to them. But I think it's important that we hear a little bit about how you might use words like empower. Where would you go with that?
So for me, empowerment, especially in my world, you know, as a holistic sexual wellness specialist, and I do a lot of trauma recovery, and I spend a lot of time and helping moving through those blockages and the shifting out of that trauma drama, you know, loop. And so for me, the empowerment part is when each individual realizes that they have choice, that life no longer is happening to you, and that you get to choose how life happens. And for me, when I see my clients, for me personally, that's how I've shifted out of all of those not playful, not fun places, is because it was like, oh, that happened to me. Life happened to me. And I didn't have control of that narrative. I didn't have power in that situation. I was powerless. Empowerment for me is that I now take my power, choose my power, own my power It's mine, and I can decide how I'm going to move and how I'm going to create my life. And so when I work with people, it's really beautiful to watch well, you mean, once they kind of grasp onto the concept, you mean I've created this reality? Like, this isn't happening to me. I'm no longer a victim. The world isn't out to get me. And you move from that place to, you mean I've created this so I can uncreate this? You mean I can create something different? And it's in that moment of, you mean I can create something different? That is, I think, when the empowerment truly happens. And then we continue to choose it, and that empowerment just continues to evolve and grow, and it expands from like this tiny little spot to like, now it's bigger, and now it's in your workforce, and now it's in your friendships, and now it's in your relationships, and now it's with your family, and it just keeps expanding until you truly are in this place of choice, which gives you feeling of empowerment. You're no longer powerless ever.
I appreciate what you're sharing, because empowerment has power in it. Power, there's Po, and Po means, in my world, beyond yes and no. It was brought forward by a chap by the name of Edward de Bono, who is the creator of lateral thinking. And what he was offering to people, and what I think you're sharing here, is you can immediately go to a yes, no. And sometimes the yes is great, sometimes the no is great, sometimes the yes is not, the no is not. But if you just Po, beyond yes or no, what is possible, Po again, to suppose, Po again, what could, unfold for you, so that you can find this notion of the power within to be empowered. Again, the pose is a beautiful way of looking at it. Any thoughts about the notion of Po?
Oh, I love that. It's like, for me, I would be like, I like it to be like the possibility. That's what I thought. I love that, because it's like, I'm not really a big fan personally of yes or no, black or white. I want all possibilities available.
So that you can leverage your potential.
Exactly, right? Like, I like variety and diversity, and it doesn't live in only yes or no. And it can't be created from only a yes or a no. There has to be beyond that. And when we step into that, this is where we fully have the potential, truly, to tap into our true potential.
So I think one of the other aspects that you're getting at, and some people might use words self-esteem, self-concept. I think there's an element of self-acceptance. So self-acceptance, self-concept, self-esteem, you're hinting at it in the words that you are describing. Now, of those words like self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-control, so is there any one of those that you would pick up and go, this is a neon sign, pay attention to this self word? Is there anything like that in your vocabulary?
I would say self-acceptance is the key. It is because when we love ourselves unconditionally and can accept ourselves unconditionally, this is where it's the game changer in life. It's where you become that extreme leader. That's where you can become that success in business. That's where you can become confident in your life. It's like it's from that place of self-acceptance that everything else branches out. And when we don't accept and truly love all of who we are, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we can't accept that, then every decision we make, every action we take is coming from that place of, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. What if I'm a fraud? What if they see my truth? There's, they will never love me. I'm not lovable. Like, all of that stuff comes from that place. And every choice, from what you choose to drive, to where you choose to live, to who you choose to be in a relationship with, to the work that you do, the job you have, moves from that place of reinforcing either self-loathing or self-acceptance. And so when we move into that place of self-acceptance, again, it's that game changer of like empowerment. It just changes the narrative. You no longer are moving from this, they're going to find out. It releases shame and guilt and hatred of ourselves. And when we hate ourselves is usually when that hatred goes out into the world, right? So like all of those things that affect how we move comes from that place of self-acceptance.
Yeah, I find it's a great word for myself as well. There's another word, agree, like, and self-agree. I get that. Self-acceptance, because you can't always agree with a person together, but you can get to a place of accepting yourself in that conversation, and to accept that conversation and to move forward without the blockage.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you put a block up, then from a self-acceptance point of view, you've got to find the alternative, do you not?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And
Or
so,
else you're back into a spin again.
and you're in the pool. You're back in the drama trauma pool.
Yep.
Wallowing and drowning. That's basically what happens.
Yeah. So self-agree, self-accept. I get the self-acceptance, and it's sort of like in my own business world. One of the things I do is I get people to accept the terms and concepts that they're going to work with.
Mm-hmm.
We may not always get full agreement, but at least let's get acceptance. But if you're going to block it, you got to give an explanation of why you're blocking it. You just can't, I'm blocking it. And that's not going to help, right? At that point in time. So that's why I've always enjoyed the word of self-acceptance. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's always so beautiful that when we get to that place of, it's not forgiveness, it's not having to agree, but it's just accepting the reality of what it is. This is who I am. These are the things that have happened. These are the experiences that have made me who I am. These are the experiences that I went through. These are the choices I made at that time. Like, it's like a place of acceptance also diffuses all of the judgment, because I think that's another big in our wordplay today, like judgment, right? Judgment is what prevents us from self-acceptance. Judgment is what prevents us from accepting the situation. Judgment is what prevents us from accepting others. Like judgment is that, you want to give a word to the blockage. Judgment is usually the big one of that blockage that, you know, that we all carry with us. And so acceptance is the opposite of judgment. It just is. There's no emotional charge with it anymore, right? It's just, it is. It's neither good nor bad, right or wrong. It just is. And I feel like when we do that for ourselves and in all those things, it helps us also to no longer be as judgmental of others as well as ourselves.
So maybe someday we need to write a book called The Poe of Self-Acceptance.
Yeah!
So as we go to close out this one, and thank you again, because this is number 5 of 5. So if you're listening in, folks, this is number 5. Hey, there's 4 others that sort of led to us being here at this point in time. But you get the final word. You get to share an idea or an insight to close us off. And once you're finished, then I'm just going to turn the recording off. I'm not even going to say goodbye. My goodbye is now, right? And thank you. But you get to take us out, Gaia. So go for it.
Okay. I think through all of our conversations that we had, it's all about awareness. It's all about choice. it's all about empowerment, and really comes down to acceptance. And when we accept who we are and our choices, and we move into those places of empowerment, we get to create the life that is filled with so much possibility that our human brains can't even conceptualize how incredible our lives can be, both professionally and personally. And so the thing I want to leave everybody with is, what if life could be filled with any possibility, and any of the possibilities that you come up with, there was even more possibilities that you didn't know about? Would you say yes? Would you allow yourself to say yes to living that life? So that's what I want to leave everybody with.